The Dutch government has collapsed, and the country is now preparing for new elections. That is what we're going to talk about in this video today. Now, if you're new to the channel, welcome. Normally here, we talk about German politics, that is the main focus, but in general, I do want to cover topics of interest in Europe overall, and this is kind of a big deal since it's dealing with a national government collapsing, a pretty well-known figure, Mark Rutte, which has been prime minister for about 12 or 13 years, is not only resigning from this cabinet but also from politics in general, which is definitely a end of an era. He's been there for a very long time, well-known figure in the European Union, the United Nations, on the international stage. But I want to take a quick look at the polling and see what the chances are for the next government, the next governing majority, and what it will be. And so let's take a look right here. Now, the Dutch system is a lot more confusing than the German system. You have a very fragmented parliament. That's because in the Netherlands, you do not have a threshold. In Germany, you have to get 5% of the vote to win seats. In the Netherlands, you don't. There's 150 seats, and if you get enough to win one seat, you get that seat. So effectively, if you get 0.67% of the vote, you will win one seat. And for that reason, we have, as you can see, several parties. The current ruling parties in the government are for the VVD, the D66, CDA, and the CU, which are all center-right or centrist, kind of liberal conservative to liberal, left liberal parties. And they have made up this coalition. They were elected in 2021 and sworn in with Mark Rutte from the VVD as their prime minister. And then we have the various left-wing and right-wing opposition parties. A slim majority, but nonetheless, there's 150 seats, 75 is half, so 76 is a majority. And right now, well, first I want to cover what really happened. So there was an issue over immigration. The VVD had wanted to impose stricter laws on immigration pertaining to families of refugees bringing their relatives over into the country after they themselves were settled in the Netherlands. And the VVD wanted to prevent that from happening or restrict it. However, the CU, the Christian Union, which is another center-right party, they went against this proposal, and we heard a few days ago that the government was resigning. Mark Rutte sent in his resignation. The government effectively collapsed because this small party, even though it's the smallest one, without those votes, you don't have a majority. And so it was over migration. That was dealing with migration. That was what effectively brought it down. But there's a lot of problems. I mean, the economy, there's some issues in the economy. There's also been problems with you've had environmental regulations placed, and that has created a lot of problems. There's a lot of push by the kind of green and left-wing parties to go very far with climate protection and environmental regulations, but there's also a lot of pushback because it is having negative effects, especially on Dutch farmers, the Dutch agriculture, which has suffered a lot. They've had to make cuts to meet these environmentalist quotas, and they have become very angry, and the current government has also lost a lot of support. And we can see now the latest polls. These are, it's very hard to look at. There's so many different parties, so it's pretty much very hard to understand, and learning Dutch politics is something that, it takes a long time. But we have the VVD at second place at 20 seats, which is down from what they won in 2021. But we have over here a party called the Bauernbürgerbewegung. Let's see, Bürgerbewegung, sorry. The Farmer Citizen Movement. This was a party, a small kind of agricultural, a minor party. And whenever the environmentalist policies came into effect, the farmers kind of backed this party, and a lot of more, generic independent conservatives and also right-wing populist voters backed this party. It was a protest party against the Rutte government and their measures against the farmers in the agricultural sector, and they rose to being the largest party. And at regional elections this year, they came out on top in every single state and are now the largest party in the Dutch Senate. And it looks like they are going to be a major player in this election. A chart right here that's going to show the different parties and what they're expected to get. in terms of seats in the polling, and I want to show you guys about how hard it is going to be to form a new government. Now, we have the current government, which consists of the liberal centrist parties, far below a majority. I mean, they're basically 25%, so they're not going to get reelected. And so we have a couple of options here. We could include the farmer citizen movement and some of the more right-wing parties. This is possible, but the problem is of course, if we go too far to the right and include some of these parties, we're not going to be able to include the more liberal ones. And even then, we can't assume that all of these liberal parties are going to be able to work together. So we would have to take out the CU, and the D66 is probably too liberal to work with some of these parties. The Forum for Democracy has had some problems. This is a potential coalition we could have. It would include the Farmer Citizen Movement, Geert Wilders' Party for Freedom, and the Party for Freedom and Democracy from Mark Rutte. Now, of course, there is problems between cooperation between the center-right and the far-right. Maybe not as much as, definitely not as much as in Germany, but still, there are some issues. Nonetheless, I think this is a possible government we could see. We could also see it go the other way. Now, like I said, there's problems between the ruling parties, but you could see them maybe go drop the CU, the CDA, and maybe go to the left. But you're going to need to go pretty much all the way to the far left, and you barely, you cross the line there. But the VVD can work with the Labour Party or the Greens. They cannot work with something like the Socialist Party that's way too far to the left. So we're starting to see here there's really not too many possibilities here for a coalition government. And I think if you take the farmer citizen movement and the kind of far right-wing populist parties together, they make up a large block. And so it's really looking like, I don't really know what to say. A coalition without these parties is going to be very, very hard. But I think definitely the farmer citizen movement, it is a populist party. It is not explicitly a right-wing populist party. It doesn't have that kind of far-right notion on immigration or things like that. Although there's probably elements that supportive of that, and their voters are definitely, former Forum for Democracy or Wilders voters, a lot of them at least. But the party profile is a lot more moderate, and that's going to allow them to work with some of these other parties. This would be a very workable coalition, I would think. And of course, here you still have the CU and the VVD, which have some problems. So, these parties, but you still see we're very short of a majority. And it is not guaranteed that the VVD will work with, someone like Geert Wilders. So if you include him, then you're going to have to take them out. So then you have to go the other way. Well, if you include D66, you're still not there. If you start including parties like the Greens, then the farmer citizen movement are not going to be able to be in the coalition with them. So there's really, I don't see a stable government at all, because you don't have a stability amongst the liberal parties. And if you go too far to the right, you basically need the liberals and the far right in a government together to form a majority. Let's see. So that would be, you could take out D66, take out the CU. So what you could do is, I think this is probably, I don't want to say it's likely, because I don't know if the PVV and the VVD will work together. I think there's chances that they could completely say, no, we're not going to let Geert Wilders' party in the government because it's too right-wing, it's too far right on issues like immigration. But without him, there's really nowhere else to go. This would work theoretically, and you could include the CU and D66, but considering that these parties just broke up based on migration issues, I don't think you can really include them all together. And you're not getting to 50%. You need the PVV in this situation. So I don't know. I don't know exactly what. And of course, this is only the poll. There's not been any polling yet since the current government has collapsed. So this is the last poll before the collapse of the Rutte cabinet. So of course, these results can change, but nonetheless, I still think it's very hard to see a government of any type getting a majority. And I think it's fair to say that, Dutch politics is fragmenting. This always wasn't the case. We had in the past two major parties, the traditional left-wing party, the Labour Party, the PVDA, the Party of the Workers, and the Christian Democratic Alliance, the CDA. Those were kind of the two traditional CDU, SPD, Republican, Democrat that dominated Dutch politics. They were both in the 20s. There were still a lot of other parties, but now you have, I believe, the largest party polling in, they're at 20 in the 20s in the seats, but they're polling, I believe, 18% and 14% in the percentage of the vote, respectively. So you don't have even a party above 20% in the whole country, which is definitely an interesting development. And I think this election, you're going to see an insanely fragmented parliament. I don't think it's going to be easy to form a majority. I think we could see a new election to be held after that, and I think eventually we could see electoral reform being pushed, because at this point you were having so many parties that you're going to have in order to form a coalition and elect a prime minister, you're going to have to have a cabinet with like 6, 7, 8 parties, which isn't viable and isn't stable. So I think we could see potentially the change of the Dutch electoral system. I don't know how easy that is, how possible that is, but I think it's going to be pushed. There's going to be pressure to make that happen, especially at the instability we're going to see after these results. But I just wanted to take a quick overview. This election will happen in November, so we have a few months, but it definitely did kind of come out of nowhere. There was instability in the coalition, but I don't think that everyone expected Mark Rutte, a senior veteran politician, to resign and his government to collapse. But nonetheless, I will do some more videos about Dutch politics in terms of the election, because it is a general election, but the main focus of this channel will still be Germany and German politics. But I think I will kind of broaden the scope of the channel eventually and cover European politics in general. And of course, whenever there's elections, there's more things to talk about in those countries. So I just wanted to give you guys an update, an overview about the situation here, and show you kind of what's going to happen. And of course, not as familiar with Dutch politics as I am with German, but nonetheless, I do know the parties. I do know some of the basic foundations, and I just wanted to make this video real quick. So if you like it, please like the video, share with anyone you know, and please subscribe. And I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching.